Welcome back to the postgame show on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis after Ohio State's 37-17 win over Maryland, Landis. And as they always say, good teams win, great teams cover. So the Buckeyes slide this one in the back door. Not that that's what matters. We will plan to have the Ryan Day news conference live in this postgame show. So that will be coming along as soon as Ryan Day gets to the podium. But for now, Landis, as we dive into this kind of odd but convincing in the end Ohio State win, we want to start with what we liked the most from Ohio State here. What'd you like?
And it can't be Jaden Fielding Stone's field goal at the end to get the cover. Okay.
Nobody cares about our bet. People thought that Ohio State was going to lose this game. This is what one of these. This was not one of these like, oh, what's wrong with them? I felt like in corresponding with our texters and getting a vibe from people during the game, there was a moment in the first half when people thought Ohio State really had a chance to lose.
Yeah. No, you're right. So what I liked was the defense kind of taking over the game, I think, right? And you texted out, right, that both sides of the ball sort of got it figured out in the second half, and that's true. The defense, I thought, got it figured out faster. I know they gave up the touchdown drive to start the second half, but I did feel like the Maryland like sort of bungle opportunity to get the field goal at the end of the first half did seem to give Ohio State's defense a little bit of juice. And I honestly didn't feel like they were playing terribly up until that point. They were sort of doing what they've done all year, which is giving up some frustrating third downs. And Maryland is good enough to finish some drives, unlike some of the other teams that Ohio State has faced thus far. But I thought, they started making plays in the backfield. They got the 2 takeaways. They got the 2 fourth down stops. And if you thought that maybe coming into this, some of the success of Ohio State's defense was like sort of misleading, fake, if you want to be even stronger than that. And then you were like, see, told you so, like in the first half of that game, which I think would have been well within your rights to feel that way. I thought they really flipped the switch in the second half and reminded us that this is, I think, a very good defense.
Oh, I don't even think I was feeling that in the first half. I mean, their touchdown in the first half is a defensive score. They're looking like Iowa out there. I feel like the defense is keeping them in the game. And you have to look at what this defense did. And there's 2 things that I really want to focus on. And the first question is this, because it's the question that we asked since the moment Jim Knowles got here. Is this a championship level defense, right? Last year, the discussion was, can you be a top 30 defense, a top 20, top 15? We spent too much time on trying to figure out what the ranking would be. Here in year 2, there's only one question. Is it a championship level defense? And I feel like with the way this offense is working right now, at times, right? We saw it in the Notre Dame game, and we saw it in the first half here with a young quarterback, with an iffy offensive line that, of course, we'll get to. This is not just like a complimentary championship level defense. It's a, can you lead the way to a championship defense? What's your answer to that question about Ohio State's defense right now?
It's yes, right? It's yes with the caveat that stiffer tests are coming, or stiffer challenges are coming. But like, I thought this was a pretty good challenge for them with what Maryland does schematically, with the athletes they have on the outside, with Taulia Tagovailoa as an experienced, certainly capable quarterback, and a guy who we've seen really give a lot of teams problems throughout his career, including Ohio State last year. I think that answer has to be, I guess I would say it this way. If everything's hitting, absolutely yes. I don't know that everything is hitting right now. I think the linebacker play has been a little like the last 2 weeks, but they've looked very good sort of despite that. So I think they're there. Like I think this defense is good enough to be sort of the front porch of the program, or however you want to phrase it. And I think they're good enough to get them where they need to go as the offense obviously continues to figure some stuff out.
I will say we've talked about this. I've thought this at times. Thought it today. I thought the first half, going into halftime, I was like, I've been at these games. I covered a gazillion of these games in the Jim Tressel era, where an Ohio State team would not play that well, would bog down in the first half and be like, what are they doing? Why is this against a MAC team or some random lower to mid-level Big Ten team? But the defense would play well. The defense would keep Ohio State in the game. And then in the second half, Ohio State would pull away. There is, I think, part of if there is frustration around Ohio State, and this is a good win, I think it's based upon what this team has become in the Ryan Day era and the offensive expectations. We've said this before. If you pretend it's 2002, you like this team. If you pretend it's Jim Tressel, if it's you think you're in the midst of the miracle season that is the greatest year in Ohio State history. Just pretend that Marvin Harrison Jr. is Michael Jenkins and pretend that Kyle McCord is Craig Krenzel and wrap yourself in the warm embrace of those memories. And you like this game. If you're wondering like, hey, I thought this was wired, then you might be frustrated. But it's as a defense first team. If you think of it as a defense first team, you're like, wow, for a defense first team, this offense is pretty good. But right? But like that's not what we think in the day era. But I'm not so sure whether for everybody's mental health or because the defense deserves it. I'm not so sure we shouldn't start thinking about this team with a new quarterback and offensive line questions as a defense first team.
I don't disagree with any of that, and I think it's okay for Ohio State to be a defense first team. It's why their defense first team that is frustrating for people, right? Because it's not
the whys, eliminate the whys, no whys, just what is.
I think that's fair, and I think you're right. I think it's perfectly okay to embrace that idea because I do think that's the reality of the situation, and I don't think it's inherently bad. It's different. It's very different. And probably difficult to wrap your arms around because of what we've seen from this program for the last 4 years, and frankly for a decent chunk of Urban's era, although there were some very good defenses there too. And you could probably argue that some of Urban's teams were defensive led as well. Certainly the 2016 playoff team was. It's okay that they are, but we got to talk about the offense too.
Yeah, we're gonna really hammer the defense until we get to Ryan Day. We can see that people are in the room. Ryan Day is not yet in the room for the post-game news conference. So that's the first question to me. Can they be that? Are they playing like that? And I do think the answer is yes. And I do think there's some things with the style. Joel Klatt, it's one of these things. It's a new experience. People know this for you and I to be home watching on TV. But I do like it. You can tell sometimes it's like, oh, no, the people doing the game. They read the stories or listen to the podcasts or watch the YouTube shows. Like they know what's up. And the discussion around this defense not wanting to give up big plays is all Joel Klatt. Talked about on the Fox broadcast all day. And guess what? Once again, they did not give up big plays. Now, there were some third downs when they're playing off coverage and like seemingly okay with giving up a 7-yard throw on 3rd and 5. That's a little bit like, oh, okay, I don't know about that. So I thought this, especially at the end of the first half, I thought they had a chance potentially to get to a point where they could get Maryland off the field and try to get a last field goal try themselves. Yeah. And they gave up, I thought, a soft 3rd down throw. And they seemed like they were just trying to they were more concerned with keeping Maryland out of the end zone than with trying to get the ball back to drive themselves. But from the way that game went, I guess I understood it. But there's also a world where it's like, that's maybe not what we think Ohio State should be. Late game. Once they got the lead, I thought the 3rd down call by Jim Knowles where he blitzed Sonny Styles and Lathan Ransom. Sonny Styles got the sack. That, to me, it was almost like strategic. Like, okay, it's a tight game. We're not going to give up big plays. We'll play soft on 3rd down. We got the lead. Let it rip. Do you think like that played into that? Because I thought that Jim Knowles 3rd down call defensively, and then Sonny makes the play. Sonny chases down a pretty athletic quarterback. But I thought that was tied together strategically, and then they were off and rolling. But maybe play back until you get a lead, then go after it.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think that's part of the unpredictability too, right? For one, I'm not sure we've seen kind of a double safety blitz like that before, and two, I think there is a sense of Jim Knowles like trying to lull offenses into a false sense of security with the way that they're playing, which is, I think, fairly described no other way as conservative, which is fine because it's been effective for them. But I feel like we've seen kind of in every game so far this year that like when he does try to ratchet it up and do something different, it's effective because teams just haven't seen it all game. They haven't been under constant duress all game. And then that does in a weird way, I think, make not obviously like they're running the linebackers in the middle of the offensive line a lot, which is frustrating. But I think like the more exotic kind of pressure is the stuff that's like, this is my blitz of the week, that kind of stuff, I think is more effective because of the way they're approaching defense kind of throughout the game.
So then the second part of the defensive conversation I want to have, and maybe Ryan Day will be coming in here soon, is about individual playmakers on defense, which is you and I did a podcast about this before the season. If we're talking individual playmakers, Josh Proctor drops in that zone. Sometimes it's very easy to drop in a zone and just stand there. He doesn't stand there. He makes a play on the ball, makes a pick, gets a pick six. Huge play. That's a guy making a play. Lathan Ransom. Listen, Tyleik Williams, Caden Curry, and JT Tuimoloau got great pressure on that play, but they didn't get Talia. They didn't get him down. And it's like, oh no, he escaped. And then he thinks he has a receiver, and Lathan Ransom climbs the ladder. That's an unbelievable individual play. The blitz called by Jim Knowles is a great play, but Talia gets out of there. Sonny Styles has to track him down. Great play. And I think I am at the point where JT Tuimoloau is one of the best run defenders on the defensive line that I have seen in my time covering Ohio State. He blew up Maryland's run game, especially in the second half. He is not going to destroy quarterbacks. He is going to destroy run games and offensive game plans. And we're talking about playmakers. Jim Knowles called it. They had dudes make plays, which is an absolute necessity if they're going to be as good as they're going to be.
Yeah, I thought Maryland's gap schemes, run schemes, gave Ohio State a little bit of trouble in the first half, and Ohio State adjusted really well to them in the second half. I think led by JT Tuimoloau. He's different than Zach Harrison, right? Because I think JT is stronger and a different kind of athlete than Zach is, but I think very similar in terms of how they affect games, which is tremendous run stopping defensive ends that will probably always leave you wanting a little something more in terms of pass rush production. But that's valuable, man. Especially, we'll talk about the linebackers, I guess, but if you can have a defensive line that can control the run game like that, it makes life as a linebacker a little easier. Maybe the Ohio State overall can do a better job of that, but I think JT's great at it. And I thought it was good to see them toss a little Caden Curry out there when I thought Jack Sawyer was not particularly effective, and mix it up with Cody Simon and place of Steele Chambers on a few drives when it made sense, because Steele was looking a little lost at times for the second consecutive game. So not only are there playmakers stepping up and making plays for the defense, but Jim Knowles and I guess the assistants as well are showing a willingness to try some different guys when maybe the base 11 is not necessarily working the way it should.
Steele Chambers and Jack Sawyer were out there on the first drive of the second half when Maryland marched down the field to take the lead. And then the next series, which ended with the Lathan Ransom pick, Cody Simon was in for Steele Chambers and Caden Curry was in for Jack Sawyer. But then Jack and Steele were in the next series. So they weren't benched, but you get another look at somebody else. And I feel like it did work. We talked a lot. Everybody talked a lot, justifiably, about Sonny Styles in the preseason. But Lathan Ransom and Josh Proctor as playmakers, and again, the entire defense is not giving it up on the other side. You're not surrendering something to get something. It feels like you're just getting the playmaking. For Josh Proctor and Lathan Ransom to have two gigantic picks in this game, what do you think about the way those guys have emerged to an even greater degree as playmakers this season?
Well, I kind of expected it from Lathan. It's Josh Proctor who's been the revelation, and I've admitted my wrongness about him already. So I that's fine. Like I think a few of us were, right. I just think we saw him come back and thought, like, what's the deal with him coming back? Like, he's not going to play this year. Not only is he playing, he's playing exceptionally well. The interception was great, and it was good to see him actually finally hold on to one. I guess I'll save that thought here as Ryan Day is walking up to the podium.
All right, this is Ryan Day. He's the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I believe he just got his 50th career win. We'll go to Ryan Day live at his post-game news conference.
As a team, you kind of feel flat. I mean, is that something that you kind of thought might be the case in practice this week, or
no? Didn't quite understand what was going on there in the first couple drives. Didn't quite get in sync on offense, and then we had a botched snap that was not supposed to be a fail. It was just a bad snap. He just kind of slipped out of his hands, and it was like one of those things. Okay, what's going on here? But that is the game, and you got to respond. So I thought we did respond well in the second half, like you said, got in a rhythm. The number one goal is to be 1-0 on Saturday, so check that box. We want to play well in the second half, check that box. We wanted to start fast in this game. We didn't get that done. So we got to look at why that is. But yeah, you can start to see the rhythm again in the second half, similar to kind of how we got in that 2-minute drive 2 weeks ago. So we got to look at that and figure out why that is. But some real good play by Marvin Harrison, and we needed that, because they were putting a lot of guys in the box, and we left the middle of the field open at times, and we took advantage of that in the second half.
Over to the left, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch, and then Nathan Baird.
You're coming off an off weekend, emotional win. And I know you respected Maryland. What do you attribute the early struggles to?
I don't know. I don't. I wish I had an answer to it. But you just got to keep, shooters keep shooting. You just keep shooting and push through it. But no, I don't really have a good answer for it, other than we got ourselves off schedule and then found ourselves in some third and bad situations, which is why third down looks the way it does. The one thing about third downs in a couple weeks ago we did a nice job of is we stayed in pretty manageable situations. This was not the case today, so we didn't quite get that done. But overall, I was pleased with the second half, but not the first.
Right? Any explanation for that?
Yeah. So we expect him to be ready for next week. It was one of those things where the question was, if he played in the game, could he have a setback if something happened in the game? The answer was yes. And just based on how everything played out last year, the decision was made to hold him this week to make sure that he was full going next week, because we know we got a lot of football ahead of us. And so we have a ton of confidence and chip in my end to go ahead and in the game and go play. And they did. But excited to get Trey back for next week. He could have played in the game, but the decision was made.
Over to the right, Austin Ward, Rivals, the podcast, and then Stephen Means.
Ryan, a month ago, you walked into the postgame at Indiana and said, sometimes you have to be okay winning with the defense, especially in the first half tonight. I mean, you get the touchdown from Josh. You keep the game close that way. Are you becoming more comfortable with that formula if that's not your preference?
Yeah, no, I have no preference as long as we win. But no, I think the defense did some great things in this game. I thought Jim and the staff did a really good job with the game plan. I thought they were a step ahead just in terms of the defenses that we were in. He did a great job of getting them into the right calls. There's still a ton of things that we can improve on and get better at. There is, but the pick six by Proctor was huge. I thought Davis did a great job there of not blindside blocking that guy. I mean, that's really heads up football. We got too many penalties on here. We got to get that all cleaned up. But I think our guys are playing hard, and I think that's the thing to me. Like, there's certain things that we can clean up, some things that were close, but our team is playing with passion. They're playing physical. They're playing hard. I mean, to see Josh make that play and then run down on the kickoff, stick the guy inside. I think it was inside the 20-yard line. There's just a lot of that play going on, and this is an exciting team to be around. I think the most exciting part of it is we haven't even reached where we can be, so we got to keep building and growing. But one of the things that you're starting to see about this team is we don't panic. If it's not going quite right, we're going to keep pushing forward. And maybe in the past it was like, okay, if things weren't going well in the first half, if it wasn't like the scoreboard wasn't turning over every couple of drives, everybody would start getting panicky. I think these guys have some poise. They played some games, and counting on that experience to pay off here in October and November.
Nathan Baird, Cleveland.com, and then Cameron Teague Robinson.
Ryan, as you assess things during the off week and you looked at offensive line personnel, was there any revisiting of the five guys you're playing there right now? And what is your concern level? I know you're saying not panicking like within a game, but like what's your concern level of that situation being the thing that kind of holds this team back?
Yeah, I gotta watch it one more time and just see where we're at with what's going on. I know that there's a lot of guys in the box. They're going to stop the run, and that opened up the pass game in the second half. But I don't know exactly what our numbers were. I know I think it was less than 100 yards. I know the big sack probably took away some of it, but I think we were just over 85 yards or so rushing. And we expect to be higher than that. So I gotta figure out what it is. Is it the personnel, the scheme, or the coaching of it? I felt like we had a good plan going in. They got a pretty good front. They do a nice job, but we want to be more explosive. But like for instance, you're coming out on the 10-yard line, and there's a lot of guys in the box, and it opened up a huge play for Marvin down the middle of the field. So those are the things that we have to do. Is if they're going to put that many guys in a box, then we got to be able to throw the football, with what we have. But at the same time, when the box looks right, we got to be efficient. And I'll look at that, and when we have our press conference on Tuesday, I'll probably have a better answer for you.
Okay, I'm going to ask people back there at the tables to clear your computers off. We're going to keep asking Coach some questions. We're going to have 2 more for Coach up here, and then I'm going to bring some players in at those tables. So if you're at the table, I need you to clear off there. A couple more for Coach right now. First of all, Stephen Means, Cleveland.com over to the right, and then Clay Hall.
Just for starting, how was Emeka right after this game? And then also, just you're talking about Kyle a little bit. What did you just think of his day-to-day?
I think he would tell you, he felt better about the second half than he did the first. Made some nice throws. Wishes he had some back, but yeah, I mean, I thought played well there. I don't know what exactly the numbers were in the second half, but that's what our expectations are. And I know he wants to be great, and we'll look at it and try to get better. But and then with Mecca, they're evaluating him now. Doesn't seem like something major, but I don't really have much of an answer for you right now.
Over to the left, Cameron Teague Robinson, the athletic, and then Dan Hope.
Ryan, it's a tough challenge to contain a quarterback like Maryland has with the pass rush. Just kind of your thoughts on what those guys up front did, kind of chasing him, keeping him running around.
There was some good plays and some ones that he snuck free on for sure. Yeah, and you can see sometimes we're bringing 5 or 6, and then there's sometimes we're bringing 4, sometimes we're bringing 3, and then so what you do is you try to change up the look in the back end for him. Are there 8 guys in coverage, 7 or 6? Sometimes 0. There was a couple that we brought 0 pressure on. And so when that happens, you have to have a good plan for it. I thought there were some good snaps, but I think there's going to be some things that we know we could have probably handled much better. But again, overall, the goal was to, pretty much contain him. He had 196 yards, 21 of 41, 2 sacks, and obviously the pick 6. So if you had said that going into the game, I probably would have signed on the dotted line on that one. So job well done. And listen, Mike does a good job. And he's a good coach, and Talia is a very talented player. You can just see he's a really good college football player.
All right, we're going to pause for just a moment, Coach. If you could just stay there. We're going to bring in Marvin Harrison Jr., Cade Stover, and Josh Proctor. We're going to send them to the back, guys. If you could let them get to the tables in the back. There.
Can you guys please
Any
clear
table
the
you want
space
back
for
there, Marvin?
Marv?
And then,
Please.
Marvin Harrison Jr., Josh Proctor.
Marv's got his luggage with him. It looks like he's going through TSA over there.
And Cade Stover. And then we're going to continue questions up front here.
Cade, where's your Louis bag? You don't have one? No, you don't have one?
Hey, Cade, you can go all the way to your left there. Okay, over here, back with Coach Day, Clay Hall, WSYX.
I wanted you to talk about getting a sack from a defensive end, but first 10 penalties, including one on the head coach. Did you talk to that guy about what he was thinking right there?
Yeah, I'm going to have to run with the guys tomorrow for that one. I'll take that one. But listen, football's a tough sport. There's a lot of passion. There's a lot going on out there. And, I'm coaching my tail off. And so I don't know. I was just trying to coach as hard as I could. I'm not going to talk about it. But I will say this, we can't have that many penalties. That can't happen. So, we can disagree on a few of them, but there's still too many out there.
Coach, over to the left, Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, you mentioned Josh's big play. I mean, it seemed like time and time again today, he was there when you guys needed him to be. Just what's the biggest difference in him this year in terms of his reliability?
I just called him out in the meeting or in our little get together there in the locker room, because I think he's the best version of himself right now. Guy's been through a lot of ups and downs, injuries, things like that. He's playing his best football. He's the best version of himself now. Now, in order for us to get to where we need to be in the next 2 months, we're going to need him to play like that. So I just think this is a guy who's been through a lot, and you can't substitute experience, and maturity. And I'm proud that he's playing like he is, but he's got to continue to stay on that discipline. Because you can see the talents out there and the physicality. He plays tough. I mean, he plays, he comes downhill. There's several pictures in my mind of him showing up at the point of attack and bringing it. So, great to see him out there playing like that.
And final question for Coach Day, front row, Tim May, Letterman row.
Yeah, Ryan, especially early. It seemed like Kyle was just like maybe a beat behind on some of the reads and stuff. And I'm just wondering, were they throwing some things at you guys that y'all had to sort of sort out?
No. I mean, Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle would say the same thing. Had a hard time early on getting to a rhythm, and you know, as a coach, I got to try to help him and figure out how I can help with that. And then, yeah, you know, whatever it is, whether we got to, you know, go have him go run a few laps before we play the first drive or whatever it is, we'll find a way to get him into a rhythm, because you can see the talent is there, the ability is there, but he cares a lot, and you know, as coaches, we'll help him get there.
Great, Coach. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Tim, just hold it. I've got Kyle McCord coming up. Thanks, Coach. Have a good evening. Great win.
All right, so we have a new producer, Mike Rostowski, who's making our show much better in the post game. But when I jumped in with my Jerry Emig Minnesota impression, he was like, "What is happening? Should this be on the air?" That was on purpose. Sometimes I just want to talk like Jerry. Hey, Cade, please help Marv get to the back. So let's talk about what Ryan Day said, and then Mike has some questions queued up from our tech subscribers. We love our tech subscribers. We text a bunch during the game. If you want to be part of that, you can sign up 614-662-4509. 4509. We'll have those people asking us what we want to, you know, what they want us to talk about. What Ryan Day said about Kyle McCord. Tim May's asking, hey, were they throwing something at you? Nope.
Yep.
What'd you think of that answer?
I appreciated the honesty, because my thought watching it was that Maryland was not doing anything overly confusing. Kyle was just a little hesitant. Maryland was dropping 7 and 8 quite a bit, and I thought some of the concepts that Ohio State was calling against those looks are probably difficult to execute. Like really trying to push the ball downfield when there's 7-8 defenders dropping is hard to do. You usually take the profit underneath and move on with your life. But even when those opportunities were there, and you and I were messaging each other back and forth a little bit on some of the throws, like I thought there were opportunities to rip a ball down the seam, rip a ball underneath, throw with anticipation, and he wasn't really doing that early on in the game, and did a little bit better of a job of it in the second half. But I understand Ryan Day's frustration with that, and you could clearly see it on his face too during the show. Like he was not pleased with what Kyle was doing.
So we were talking about the first third down play. This is one of those where I'm like, Landis, what's supposed to happen here? So I sent you the screenshot so you can tell. And again, this is one of the things. Teams are going to drop guys. They're going to drop 7 and 8 against this Ohio State offense. But to me, if the solution to that is A, run it, or B, rip throws in between that defense, they're going to have to rip throws. So like they're inviting you to run, or they're inviting you to throw with anticipation and confidence into the small windows that are still there. And I did think he turned down a third down throw, the very first third down of the game. He turned down a guy that I thought was there between two Maryland defenders, not a huge window, but one defender was flat-footed, the other one was drifting toward the sideline. I thought there was a window there. He stared at it. He didn't take it. Then he rolls away from pressure and tries to get it to Marv. He actually has Cade Stover open underneath Marvin for a first down, wide open. So like doesn't take two guys that would have been there. Comes back next drive on a very similar play to that third down play. I think it was a second down play. Rips it to Egbuka for a 13-yard gain in a similar window. The window is a little bit bigger, but it's a similar play. So I felt like that was one of those where Ryan Day got to the sideline and said, hey, man, you got to take that. And then he did. But then there was another throw on that drive where I think it was Egbuka again, middle of the field. He's open. He waits a beat too long, and the safety closes on the throw and makes a good play on the ball. Yep. But if he throws it before Egbuka comes out of the break instead of after Egbuka comes out of the break, it's a completion. And I think when we're talking about what Ryan Day is talking about just there, it's not anything Kyle didn't expect. He just didn't take it at first instinct. And I think that's a decent chunk of what bogged down the Ohio State offense in the first half.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think they could have ran the ball a little more sort of like vertically rather than horizontally against some of those Maryland pass-oriented looks. But I think you're right. I think Kyle's, if it's indecision or like the clock in his head is just not right, or maybe he's really hoping that Marv or whoever is read number one on that play is going to eventually come open. But the timing is off on some of these things. He's either late or not on time in terms of throwing with anticipation on some of those like inward breaking routes where there is a window, but like you got to throw it at the right time or else that window closes pretty quickly. But we're also, I think the bar's high, right? Like we're talking about fairly advanced quarterback play here, especially from the guy that Kyle McCord is replacing. So compared to that, like it is a step below. It's leaving something to be desired. I think there are certainly ways for this offense to be a productive passing offense, then, you know, if you lean into some more of Kyle McCord's strengths and like give him a little bit of runway, I guess, to get more comfortable as he plays more games. But it definitely was not, if you thought, and I certainly thought, and I made some predictions to that effect, that the Notre Dame game was going to be like a launch pad for Kyle McCord to like really start ripping some throws and taking the next step and being productive. Like we see some of the best quarterbacks in the country being productive. And this was not that.
But then he worked it out in the second half. So like 19 of 29, 322 touchdowns. Like he worked it out in the second half. He got better in the second half. Ryan Day likes the second half, didn't like the first half. If you're going to like a half, I'd rather like the second half. And the second half was what I thought the whole game was going to be. The first half, Ohio State goes that weird. And by the way, Ryan Day confirmed was not a fake punt.
Yep.
I thought it was a fake punt.
I did not.
So weird. You did not ever think it was a fake punt because nobody blocked. The lack of blocking, is that what clue?
Well, I was pretty certain on first blush that it was just a bad snap, and then like I watched their second punt, and all the people were the same, and they all did the exact same thing. So it was just I've never seen a snap do that, but yeah, I think it was just a botched snap.
Yeah. So, and I, we're gonna talk about special teams later. It's like one of those things. If it's a poorly executed special teams call, I feel like that's on the special teams coach. If it's just the long snapper getting it caught in the field turf, I feel like that's on the special teams coach. That was an awful special teams play. Yes?
Yeah, it was an awful special teams game. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. So let's talk about the injuries, though, first, because as Joel Klatt said, Gus and Joel were so happy to be in Columbus. They were like, they were like, finally. Now they've done like 2 or 3 Colorado games, and those were exciting too. But they're like, if they didn't get to an Ohio State game till like week 8 or 9 last year, and I think it killed them. And I think they were like, we are not waiting that long, because this is actually the Ohio State Michigan game, like made Gus and Joel who they are. Like that was their launching point to the world. So they want to call the Buckeyes. So they were so happy to be here. But as Joel Klatt said when they came in on the Fox broadcast, best skill position guys in the country. Okay, let's run through the best skill position guys in the country. Trevion Henderson doesn't play. That's a surprise on the injury report. We had no indications during the week other than Ryan Day saying Mayan Williams had a great week of practice. We were like, oh, well, isn't that lovely? Mayan's had a great week of practice. And now it's like, oh, he's talking up the guy who they're going to have to play this week. Yeah. Ryan Day said it's not a long-term thing. What did you think about Trevion Henderson being out? How did they play without him? And how much do they need him back?
I think they need him back. I think they need more explosion out of this run game. I still think there's a world where I think Trevion and Chip should be balanced, but without Trevion, it's a little one note for me in terms of a rushing attack. There was one play in particular, I think it was in the second half, where the blocking was not great, but there was a seam for Chip to like plant his foot and get north, and there was a pretty big gap there I think he could have scored on, and he was just a little slow to do it because that's not really his skill set. And I'm not saying that Trevion would have saw the seam, maybe he would not have, but if that play plays out the exact same way and Trevion makes that same cut, I think Trevion might have scored on that play. So I think that's the kind of stuff that they're missing without him. But I also understand wanting to be cautious with him, right? If he's got a little nagging thing that you want to make sure you have him for the biggest games, I don't really have much of a problem with sitting him in this one.
20 carries for 61 yards for Chip Trainum. Are you a little surprised they didn't go to Dallin Hayden at all?
I've been surprised at the lack of Dallin Hayden all year. It's especially fitting in this game because Dallin Hayden saved their butts last year against Maryland.
Yeah.
And they needed a little bit of that and a jolt to the run game in this one. It wasn't all on the backs, but I don't think the backs play particularly well. And I don't understand the lack of Dallin Hayden, because even if you're thinking long term, right, like you want to preserve some eligibility, you can still use him. He's got 4 games to use. And in a world where Trevion Henderson is not available, and for as good of a week of practice as Mayan Williams have, they didn't use him that much. There was room to use Dallin Hayden, and they didn't do it. So, yeah, I guess I wasn't surprised because they haven't used him all year, but I was frustrated by the lack of Dallin Hayden.
Because it feels like if there's no Trey, who's the closest thing to Trevion Henderson? Dallin Hayden. Right? Closer than Chip and Mayan are in terms of explosion? No?
Yeah. I mean, Evan Pryor is probably the correct answer to that, but Evan Pryor's he's never played. Yeah. But that's equally puzzling too. Like why can't Evan Pryor get a touch or two in a game like this? You know what I mean? Like, So yeah, it's all kind of odd. The running back personnel usage, I think, has been strange for most of the season.
Well, just again to throw in a comment, we like to talk about things holistically, especially because every Monday we do Kings of the North, and we hope people are watching our Kings of the North show about Northern football, where we talk about the 28 teams in the North. Texas lost, and I knew they were going to lose. I knew it. I knew they were going to lose. Everybody's like, Texas is going to the playoff. They are not going to the playoff. Oklahoma might be. Oklahoma's better than people expected. Oklahoma's kind of back pretty quick, but I actually still think nobody from the Big 12 is going to go to the playoff because I think someone's going to jump up and bite Oklahoma too because they're not flawless. But I just want to say that Texas lost, and I knew they were going to lose. And going into this week or whatever, but like, who would you rather be? Would you rather be Ohio State or... Number 1, Quinn Ewers is coming for you. Number 2, Sark's coming for you. Number 3, Ari's coming for you. Because Ari's like all about the horns. Did you horns down? Did you send a photo to Ari, a horns down photo?
No, he's probably he's getting enough of it on Twitter, I'm sure.
We knew. We knew. We said we knew. The Alabama-Texas game was more about bad Bama than good Texas. So I hope you didn't get hornswoggled by the horns. But, right, going into this game, who would you rather be, Texas or Ohio State, coming into this week? I certainly would have been a decent chunk of people in college football who would have said Texas. And I don't know if Ohio State would have beaten Oklahoma today or not. I actually think they probably would have. But just a reminder, everybody's got problems. I think people wondered if Marvin Harrison Jr. would have problems today because you were a little under the weather for snap judgments on Wednesday night. I filled in, and Austin and I were like, hey, Marvin has an ankle, but like we think he'll be okay. And apparently behind us, Marvin was being carried on a stretcher or something. Like Marvin was
wearing a walking boot.
Yeah. Was lying on the turf having surgery performed on his ankle inside the Woody. And I'm like, he's fine. And so I was like, man, this is quite a thing. Live shows. What are you going to do? So I think there were some people were like, we definitely got messages that were like, do you know that he was behind you in a walking boot as we were talking? And the answer was no, we didn't know that. But I just still, from his words, was like, listen, he played with a bad ankle last year. This is worse, but I think he'll be okay. And I don't know, 8 for 163, and he drew a pass interference call. Like, that's kind of okay, right? Was that enough Marv for everybody?
It's a good amount of Marv. Yeah. And he got the passing game going a little bit. I think it was nice to see him score that, I guess, a second touchdown on that drive. After the first one got called back, he was in the slot and then kind of ran like a double in breaking route kind of thing with him and the Xavier Johnson, who was next closest to the offensive line. So it was good. Like I thought it was, gutsy. It was funny. Ohio State before the game like tweeted out a photo to like brag about the cool LeBron cleats that Marvin Harrison Jr. was wearing, but it also gave us a really good shot of the spat and tape job that Marvin had on his ankle, and he looked like an offensive lineman with all the tape he had on there. So I was like, oh boy, that doesn't look good. Is he gonna be able to move in this game? And the answer was yes. So tough performance out of Marv, and something Ohio State desperately needed.
So the offense is doing nothing. He accounts for 77 yards on 2 throws on a drive that is their only offensive points in the first half. It still only leads to a field goal, which is not great. Kyle McCord underthrew Marv on the deep shot, but I think Marv ran like an 80-yard route and Kyle threw it 68 yards. So it's like, oh man, I can't believe Kyle McCord underthrew that. But Marvin was practically down the tunnel like Forrest Gump on that play. That was such a deep shot. So like, I don't think we should like blame Kyle for that. I think he threw it as far as he could throw it.
Yeah, and it was about 60 yards. Marvin ended up catching it like it was a punt return.
Yeah.
Kyle underthrew the one to Julian Fleming. Like Julian would have scored if that was anywhere other than where it was. But yeah, I didn't have a problem with the ball to Marv. That was Marvin like turned the Jets on a little too much, I think, on that play.
It's like Marv. Okay. 90 yards is it's not Cardale. Maybe Cardale could have gotten that there.
Yeah.
But anyway, Marv says, I thought the second catch on that drive, the sideline route, he went up, caught the ball in the air, and when he landed, I felt like we could all collectively almost hear him say, oof, landing on that ankle, right?
Yeah.
And then he momentarily sort of stumbled, but then kept going. Like, I thought it was actually a good test of the ankle. It looked like to me like, okay, he's not 100%, but I think what he said on Wednesday night in interviews was exactly right, which is good enough. He was good enough. Whatever he was today, 8 for 163 was good enough. And if that's what's going to happen the rest of the year, like, I think he's good, they're good.
We'll have to see what's up with Egbuka, right? Because I think
that's because we have. I think we can learn a little bit from Marv as we apply to Egbuka, right? So let's move to Egbuka then. Are you worried?
It didn't look great. Yeah, I thought they called it a bruise. The Fox crew did when Egbuka was coming out of the medical tent. It looked to me like his leg got caught underneath him a little bit. So I don't know if that's ankle, knee, or what. But he seemed to know it right away, and I didn't love the way it looked. So Ryan Day said it's like not super serious and perhaps not long term, but I think Ohio State better hope that it's not something that lingers beyond next week. I think they can get by without Egbuka against Purdue, but you obviously want him as close to his best as possible against Penn State in that secondary. So, yeah, I'm a little concerned about it.
But I do think, like, to me, it's Marv is a reminder that you need him. You need him, but you don't need him to be 100%.
Yeah.
They're tough. They care. They want to play. And again, like if people didn't catch it earlier in the week, like I asked Marv, hey man, there's a big NFL payday coming for you. When you land and you hurt your ankle, are you thinking about that at all? Or are you thinking about that at all during this process as you're rehabbing and stuff? And he was like, what are you talking about? Like he wasn't quite mad at the question, but he was almost offended, which is like why I want to ask it, because I want to give guys a chance to do that. Now, the other thing is, like, realistically, all these guys, they do all think about it. Right? They have to.
Of course.
The people around them are thinking about it. So we can't pretend that they're all going to, crawl through a tunnel with nails sticking out of it to help their team win if it's going to make them not play in the NFL. But I did believe, like, I care about this. So, like, it's just a reminder. If Ohio State fans are a little, there's just been a lot of really good Ohio State players who have gotten hurt. So when you add like Nick Bosa and then you add Jackson Smith and Jigba on top of that, and it's just like, oh man, Marv is hurt and wants to play. And if anyone has ever talked to Egbuka for half a second, like Egbuka is a supremely skilled, like down and dirty football player, is he not?
He is, yeah. He's not afraid to live his life in the mud if he needs to. He's pretty physical, strong-willed and physically strong guy. So like if he is upright, I think he'll play.
Yep.
I want to ask you a question. So we'll have to see where the statistical production goes, right, for Marv, right? But he was in the Heisman Trophy conversation coming into the year. I don't know if he can get back into it now because he had a few games where the stats were a little lean. But let's extrapolate a game like this over the course of the next 7 games. If he keeps building like this and like he does it while hurt, does that help his cause? Like, it's not only is he Marv and he's productive, but like he's toughing it out and playing on one bum leg while he's doing it.
It's a story award, right?
Yeah, that's
the
what I'm.
Story of the season: the Ohio State Buckeyes, a supremely skilled son of a Hall of Famer who works harder than any receiver in Ohio State history, with an NFL future with millions right in front of him. Toughed it out through a second consecutive ankle sprain, limping his way through a season as he dragged an underwhelming offensive line and a new quarterback all the way to the national championship. I can say that story being told right before he walks up those 3 steps onto the Heisman stage. Can you not?
Yeah, I can. I also thought it was funny too that like it was like, oh, Marv's ankle's messed up. We don't know how much he's going to be able to do for Ohio State this week. What's the first play of the game? Well, we threw a screen to Marv.
Yeah.
He didn't catch it, but we threw a screen to him.
I did think when he bent down, that's a bad throw by Kyle. That's like when he bent down to try to catch that, I thought he bent down like a guy with a hurt ankle.
Yeah. I think it was more the throw, but
I think it was more the throw, but I think like fresh as a daisy, 1,000% Marv is like, I'll scoop this up with my pinky and go. But like, I didn't think he could get down all the way. So actually after that, I was kind of like, ugh. And then it was like, nope, he's good. Okay.
Yeah,
Our tech subscribers have thoughts during the game sometimes. So if you're not a tech subscriber, if you don't know, like we pound out a text. Hey, this is our analysis of what just happened. This is what we think. This is how it relates to what was said during the week. Hey, by the way, remember this. Hey, here's a stat. Here's our expertise. Bang. And then you'll look and it'll be like 111 replies in 14 seconds. It's like, okay, people are wound up. Ohio State's losing. So we then say, hey, send us questions. And when it's just me and Landis, it's hard for us to get to them sometimes. We had a show after Notre Dame where it's like we couldn't get to the questions because we only have so many hands and so many brains. So we hired 2 new hands and 1 new brain. His name is Mike Urostowski. He is the new producer for the podcast and Kings of the North and Kings of Columbus. Mike has now gathered all these questions, and we're going to start running through them. If you want your questions on the postgame show, sign up for a free trial. 614-662-4509. But Mike, why don't you jump in and say hello to the good people?
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Excited to be here. Yeah, let's get right into this. A lot of questions coming from the fans. The first one I'll start with was Jeremiah. He texted in and he said, "I feel like today was a good win, but do you think the bye week killed the momentum that the team had?"
What do you think of that, Landis?
Yeah, it's the second year in a row where they've come out flat after the bye week. Still end up winning comfortably. So like Ryan Day's margin of victory after weeks off will still look pretty good. But those of us who actually watch the games know that they did not play Iowa all that well at the start last year, coming off the off week, and certainly didn't come out firing in this game off the off week. I don't know that it killed momentum, right? It's weird. Like you have the momentum of a win, right? You have like the emotional high of a win. But it's not like Ohio State was like rocking and rolling on both sides of the ball and then had to stop playing games. Like their offense was still very much figuring things out. Now their defense was playing well, and that continued into this game. So I don't think it stunted the defense's momentum. Maybe had Ohio State's offense like played that game against Notre Dame, pulled it out in the end, found a way to win, and then immediately played it right away, they would have come out firing in this game. I think that's possible. But I don't think that like growth was stunted for the offense by not playing last week. I just think like it's fun. Like Ryan Day was asked like, "Hey, last year didn't come out of bye week all that good." It's like, yeah, we changed some stuff this year, and what was the result? Like it was worse.
Yeah, I thought marinating in that Notre Dame win for an extra week was good for them. I thought it was a good bye week. It's one of these things. I don't love bye week conversations because everybody has one, and sometimes I don't like bye week conversations. I don't like game start conversations because if I hear another question about what's it like to sit around in the hotel all day, it's like you just watch TV. I don't know. Like, what do you want to do? Things happen at different times and things happen on different days. There are bye weeks, and that's what I think. And like, find something more interesting to talk about. But I also think they're bad at noon starts at home sometimes. I think they sometimes they drag. It's like oh, the students, it's like say you're kind of people are so used to like, big time 8 o'clock games. Now big noon has been around for so long. They should be used to it by now. But I think against non-Penn State, Michigan opponents, sometimes noon, like they're not firing on all cylinders, but also like they got to get it figured out. Like this is on Ryan Day, like figure this out. This is like all the people around the logistics people, like what they tried to fix it, try to fix it again. But also, I don't know, like Kyle was just off. I do think like Kyle was just off early. And I think if he takes 3 more throws that are there, I think it might solve a decent chunk. And the number 1 running back was out. So like that's part of it too, right? Like there's 2, the quarterback didn't play well and the running back didn't play at all. And the offense bogged down in the first half. It might just be just that.
Yep. I think that's right.
All right, Mike, you got another one?
Yeah, Doug, you made a good point about TreVeyon Henderson being out in RB1. We have a text question coming in from the 614 that says, should they consider Chip Trayanum to be RB1 over TreVeyon Henderson?
I think they maybe should be I don't think Chip should be above Trey. Not above. Maybe equal, but I still think probably the best scenario is more like 60-40 TreVeyon. But I do think the thunder and lightning kind of thing is better. But as you noticed today, like I'm very big on like small sample size guys. I don't think Chip was a small sample size guy, but also he's really effective in his role. We also saw what happened when you give him the ball 20 times. Like he doesn't run for 200 yards.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I don't think it, if you want to call him 1A, 1B, that's fine. I've said a lot that there should be more balance between the two of them. I still think TreVeyon should get more. I would love to see a world where they're on the field together, right? We saw the one red zone play where they won at Mayan, the block for Chip. I would love to see that play where it's Chip blocking for TreVeyon. That sounds pretty fun, right? And I think TreVeyon might be able to do a little something more with a wide hitting sweep play like that. So they complement each other really well. I think Ohio State needs both of them to do what they want to do this year. I don't think TreVeyon should suddenly see a dip in his touches and Chip should get the bulk of the carries. I don't think that's the answer.
They don't have an Ezekiel Elliott or a J.K. Dobbins. They don't have a bell cow workhorse, which is fine. And actually, as we've talked about a lot, like might be the plan going forward. When you recruit Travion Henderson and Evan Pryor in the same class, when you have multiple times where you're trying to go after, 2 backs in a class or guys back to back, like they're creating that world. It might be more like the Georgia model, but I don't think chip above Trey is the answer. Mike, what else?
Yeah, guys, we'll keep it with a running question. This one comes from Alex. How do we fix the run blocking issues with the offensive line?
All right, so this was on my list. It's like if you're watching on YouTube, this is what I do. Mike has a whole computer program to make a rundown sheet. I just write it on a piece of notebook paper. You're
a pen and paper guy.
I'm an old man. I'm keeping the Michael Scott Paper Company in business. I went to after school started, and then they have all the school supplies on sale. I went and bought 50 notebooks for like 30 cents each. Like 90% off, because they were like, these second graders don't want these notebooks. Maybe this 50-year-old man will want them. And I was like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. So I had dealing with the run blocking from the offensive line. We have to talk about this. And so we'll talk about it now. The direct comparison, which Joel Klatt made a million times. When the Ohio State offensive line loses a direct comparison to the Notre Dame offensive line, as they did that entire game, hey, look how Notre Dame offensive linemen get to the second level. And the Ohio State guys don't. Okay. Notre Dame's offensive line is great. They lost that comparison today. Now, Maryland still didn't run for 1 million yards, but there were times Joel Klatt saying, look at these Maryland offensive linemen getting to the second level. Here's Tommy Eichenberg getting blocked. And Ohio State almost never does that. They certainly almost never did it today. The discussion a couple weeks ago, Landis, about them playing more violently in the run game, which is find your guy and stay on your guy and bury your guy. It still feels like in the run game, when guys are pulling, when they're doing zone blocking, they're pitter-patter. Who am I supposed to block? Oh, wait, I missed him. Oh, I didn't get there in time. Oh, I touched him, but I didn't stay on him. I thought it was really bad.
This was their worst game, I thought, at least in the run game. And there were protection breakdowns as well. Josh Fryer did not have his best game. Yeah, I think it's partly the personnel, right? I thought was it Nathan, right? Nathan Baird of Cleveland.com asked Ryan Day about looking at potential personnel decisions along the offensive line during the off week. And I thought Ryan Day's face, his expression in reaction to that was interesting. It was sort of like kind of, but not really. Like
well,
maybe we should have. Yeah, it was almost like maybe we should have. But that's a fair question. Like what? Like who? Then who? Like I don't know. Especially a tackle. Like I don't know what the answer is. If you're looking for new tackles, I don't know that you can put new tackles in there. Maybe
they're
Luke
not
Montgomery.
playing the San Diego State guy at left tackle because they have a million options.
Yeah, it's like Luke Montgomery and Tegra Shabola, who I still maintain is more of a guard than he is a tackle. And then you don't really have much outside of those two in terms of guys who are actually able to play at the moment. I think they're not being done any favors by this spamming of stretch runs, especially into the boundary. They just don't execute that run play well. There's times where it'll get out for 4 or 5 yards, and that's great, but it's not a particularly efficient run play for them. And the reason you do it is to run a boatload of play action pass off of it, and they're not doing a ton of that either. They did get to it more in the second half, which was good to see. But the reason for running that play as consistently as Ohio State does in the face of it being so inefficient is because you want to use it to set up play action pass, and they don't do it enough. So then why are you doing it at all? I think the offensive line will be much better suited to have a more vertical rushing attack than it has at the moment. I thought in the Youngstown State game going into the Western Kentucky game that we were getting to that point, and then it just reverted back to this stuff of running stretch all the time, and they're just not good at identifying guys and getting engaging blocks and then getting off of blocks and working double teams and getting up to the second level. Like none of it's working. And that's why every time they run the ball, it's like you look like, oh, they don't have a lot of negative runs. Like, yeah, that's true, but they have 1 million runs for 1 and 2 yards, which is like just as bad. And
as Joel said on the game, when they try to run the ball on first down and get 1 yard or get 2 yards, it sets them behind the sticks and they're off. When they throw on first down, it sets them up for better execution as an entire offense. I don't know that it's a reasonable expectation for this aspect of the offensive line play to vastly improve the rest of the year.
I agree.
Yeah. So then what's the answer? Is it you're saying run different types of running plays to allow a guy to engage, get him off to the side, open a hole, and be done? right? And get vertical and hit the hole and try to get your 4 yards.
Yeah, less horizontal movement, like especially the full zone wide stretch plays. Like I don't think this line is athletic enough to do that. Now it could work out that I don't think there is actually a good answer. I just think this offensive line collectively is sort of limited in what it can do in the run game, and that is incredibly frustrating because it wasn't really good last year, and I think it's far worse right now. And I'm like you, I don't see a way for it to get better. But if it's a lot of like more like inside zone, duo, which is like a similar kind of idea, just like downhill vertical run game, and then mix in a couple of the gap schemes, like the counter run that Travion Henderson scored a 61-yard touchdown against Notre Dame on, and then the other play where he almost scored a touchdown against Notre Dame was also a pin pull kind of run. Those don't always look great, but I think a combination of downhill with a little mix of some of those gap plays is what they need to do. I don't think it guarantees efficiency. All I know is that like running the stretch play as much as they're running is just setting them back too much. So I hope they stop, but it's like Ryan Day's bread and butter run play too. So I don't think it's actually going to happen.
A year ago, I was asking them to abandon the run because their running backs were too hurt, and I don't know what they were chasing. And I'm almost at the point of asking them to abandon the run because of the offensive line this year. The running back room was healthy until this week, right? But it's like, I do think they have enough bodies with the experience the guys got last year, but I don't know if this is going to get much better. So in a world where Kyle McCord threw 29 times and the tailbacks had 26 carries, like, can we get to like a 2/3, 1/3 pass to throw ratio instead of trying to straddle something that is closer to 50-50 or maybe 55-45 passing? Just, they're good at throwing, they're bad at running. Why do you try to do both equally?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't balance is great if you're good at both. They're not good at both. So why do you need to be balanced?
And it's very unfortunate. Now, last year was like really out of their hands because to have the number of significant running back injuries that they had was very unusual, right? That's what, and it's almost to their credit. Like, they got to Dallin Hayden, a true freshman who nobody ever expected to play, and he ran for 125 yards against Maryland because they have good football players. Like, that's almost a credit to their depth, but they still weren't as good as you expected them to be. This is their fault. This is not injuries. This is all the stuff why we did a 2-hour podcast on the offensive line before the season. But it's come home to roost. You can't wish it away. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. So throw the ball. So like the idea, which is why, again, like they came out and threw a bubble to Marv on the first play of the game on first down. Now they bounced it, but like that don't just the runs into the line that aren't going anywhere, or these stretch plays where there's nothing there. I feel like, again, Josh Simmons is in a very difficult spot. If there's somebody lined up right over him and he knows exactly who he's supposed to block, I think he can block him. If you ask him to do the next step beyond that, which is go find somebody, I just feel like he does not find him. And then Josh Fryer got burned. Like, Kyle held the ball a little bit too much. I thought Fryer had like at least 2 bad pass pro reps, right? One gave up a sack, one flushed Kyle out. Wasn't a great game for him. I just say that because you sit in a seat in the team room. We noticed that the other week, right?
Yeah, well, not anymore because it's broken, but yeah.
And it was like, oh, why is this seat collapsing? And it's like, oh, because Josh Fryer sits here and he has the widest shoulders of anybody at Ohio State since Andy Katzenmoyer. He does not fit into a normal human seat. So then Landis had to move over and sit next to me, which I know you didn't want to do.
It was fine.
All right, so the run blocking, but it does, like, it's just one of these things when you look at other teams do it well or do it better than Ohio State. Some of this stuff, the running back doesn't even have a chance because it's like, what happened? Free linebacker.
Yeah.
Why was he free? Because there was a double team and somebody was supposed to climb and they didn't climb. They fell down. Somebody, like, they got tied up. They went after it like in a way that felt like they were going half speed. And I know they're not going half speed, but sometimes they look like they're going half speed. Right? So I don't know. That's kind of odd. You know what's not odd? Hearing from our dudes. Landis and I, we sit and watch Austin Ward and Jeremy Birmingham. They're out in the streets with the people. So they are going to be coming to us live from Ohio Stadium with their snap judgments momentarily. They like being on the scene. They'll be able to tell us more about, you guys heard Marvin Harrison Jr. was coming in to talk. Cade Stover was coming in to talk. So they're getting set up. They're getting ready. Mike, is there one more question that we can get to before we go out to Austin and Berm in the shoe?
Yeah, guys, I got one more for you. We'll switch over to the defensive side of the ball. Ira would like to know, what do you guys think is going on with Tommy and Steele? Seemed like another lackluster game from those two.
So Tommy missed that one tackle on Tagovailoa that was surprising because he read it, he reacted, he looked fast getting after him. They just missed the tackle. And it's surprising because, like, Tommy's a great football player. Cody Simon was in for Steele a little bit more than we usually see. What we did talk about linebackers a lot with Jim Knowles recently. What do you think's happening?
I do. I wonder if some of this transition in defensive strategy is impacting them a little bit. Like if they're not kind of sit back and read and react kind of linebackers, but they're more like, I'm going to fly up like a bat out of hell to the line of scrimmage and like pick the right gap and just like try to make plays at the line or behind the line, more like they did last year. And this year I think is a little bit more like maybe like sit back a little bit. Maybe that's impacting their player, impacting their effectiveness. I do feel like they're running into the wrong gap a lot. There were a couple of runs where it was like, hey, if Tommy was one gap over, that play is a 2-yard run instead of a 7 or 8 yard run. There were a lot of second down runs for Maryland that turned 2nd and 10 and the 3rd and 2. And I think if you look at like the third down conversions, at the end of the day, the third down conversions look okay for Ohio State's defense. But I think like the 8 or whatever it was that Maryland ended up converting, they finished, what did they finish in the game? They finished 8 of 19. I think 6 of the 8 were like 4 yards or shorter. 6 of their 8 conversions were 4 yards or shorter. And it's because Ohio State is allowing them to get back on schedule via poor run fits on early rundowns. And I think a lot of that is on the linebackers. So I don't know. I mean, I agree with the question that they're not playing well. And like Jim Knowles said as much last week, and Steele Chambers said the same thing last week. So are teams like scheming it up different to expose some of those guys' weaknesses? Perhaps. But yeah, it's not the linebacker play has not been as good as I expected it to be so far this year.
And it really could be one of these situations where I think we would say last year with the big plays that the defense gave up at the most inopportune times, that defense wasn't good enough. The linebacker play was good enough. It was excellent. Tommy Eichenberg was an All-American and Steele Chambers played very well. Well, the bigger picture problem, the number one issue for the defense is solved, has been solved through 5 games. And maybe the linebackers not playing as well is in service of that, which is what you said. But, it's not the pieces matter. But if the defense overall is playing better, now, if they get in the right gaps and they don't miss any tackles at all, and they look like they did last year, holy moly, it's another upgrade for this defense. Mm-hmm. But I do think as Jim Knowles said, last year we used Tommy, what did he say, for his aggression, and now we're using him for his mind. So Tommy Eichenberg can do both, but man, if they just let you rip, bang, he's a monster. And sometimes when you have to think he's the quarterback of the defense, it slows you down a little bit. You're so worried about everybody else. It's like, why are you out of your gap? Well, I was making sure 5 other guys were in the right place for them. So I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but I do think we have to keep the main thing, which is the defense playing better? And I think the answer to that is no doubt about it, yes. And maybe the fact that the linebackers aren't playing quite as well is not coincidental. It's actually tied to the better, bigger picture.
That's quite possible, and I think probably the case. It doesn't excuse some of the miscues, though, right? I don't think like you don't want to see like Tommy was like a borderline All-American last year, and we were talking about it coming into this year. Like, is he one of the better off-ball linebackers in the country? And like he's not really played like it to this point. I don't think he's played awful. Like he's not played terribly, but it's not to the same level that it was a year ago, or at least you don't feel him as much. And maybe that's what it is, right? Maybe the style of defense just lends itself to not feeling that position group as much as we felt them last year. But in a world where those two aren't, I guess, as effective as they were a year ago, I don't know. I'd like to see a little more CJ Hicks, maybe. Like if you're going to pull Cody Simon off the field or Steele Chambers off the field for Cody Simon, why can't we get a little CJ Hicks run too?
Okay. We have our guys set up at the shoe. We're going to go out to Austin and Berm right after this break on the postgame show on the podcast.
It's time for our favorite snap judgments game. Welcome into the Horseshoe. Ohio State wins 37-17 over Maryland. Unbeaten Maryland. And sometimes it's called
now beaten Maryland.
Now beaten. Well, they were unbeaten. They were dominant. They were incredible. Snap Judgments, of course, is brought to you by Buyers Auto, and it's choose your own adventure. Are you, A, going to nitpick, be very unhappy about a first half that was clearly not to Ohio State's full potential on offense? B, thrilled with the resilience, loving the way that the defense responded, the big plays from Josh Proctor, the fact that the offense kicked into gear. C, who cares? That's another Big Ten win.
Definitely not C.
Okay.
Somewhere between A and B. I think this game, you know, in the pregame key show we talked, and I said the one thing I was really worried about was just the team coming out flat and having a little bit of a Notre Dame hangover. No matter how much they say they won't have it, I think it's human nature to have it. The day feels a little bit like it's like meh out here. It's kind of meh. And then like you get that first quarter and it's everything that every worst fear you have about the Ohio State team this year being proven right. Their pass rush is non-existent. They're giving up third downs on defense. The offense looks clueless. The quarterback is holding the ball for too long, getting sacked. Maryland's dropping 8, and the Buckeyes can't run into it. They're not throwing into it, and it just looked like a team that didn't really have a sense of what they were doing. A bunch of penalties, a lot of things to clean up, and then the second half happens, and then you can look at it and say, okay, well, it's a 20-point win against what I believe is probably the 4th best team in the Big Ten. So I'm trying to couch it from that perspective.
Sure.
My brother, he'll watch this eventually, so I'm going to be careful what I say. He's not always the smartest person I know, but he's one of the smartest people I know. Said in a message to myself and my other brothers last night, Ohio State's favored by 20. Are you, as a fan, most happy with a 20-0 win, a 40-20 win, or a 50-30 win? And I don't know what the right answer is, but I think
any of them. You take any of them.
You should be, right? But I don't most Buckeyes fans are so used to everything being perfect and being the highest scoring offense in college football and all of the things that we've watched Ohio State be in the last 6-7 years. And so now when they just look human at times, it feels incredibly frustrating. That first half was bad football by Ohio State. But yet, because they were playing a team that is decidedly less talented than them, and again, Maryland may be the 4th best team in the Big Ten, but the gap between 1, 2, and 3, and 4 is huge. But because they're playing a team that is not in that top 3 in the league, it's 10-10 at half. And so you go into half feeling like, hey, this isn't a big deal. But if you're watching it on the field in the first half, there's no way to not say, wow, this is a big deal. This team did not look prepared, mentally prepared, emotionally prepared. They didn't seem to have a game plan of what they were going to do and kind of let Maryland dictate terms, which is not what I would have expected.
So we've had this conversation, and I mentioned it to Bill. It's like I felt like last season my coverage of the team suffered because I was dwelling too much on the negatives of Ohio State. And I don't want to fall into that trap. I do think that there are a lot of areas that Ohio State can improve. Ryan Day rattled off a few of them and said that they can still play a lot better upstairs in that post-game press conference. Like, he is right about that. I completely agree. And we can go through, and we will over the next week, the things that they can continue to improve at. If they're going to beat Penn State in 2 weeks, if they're going to win in the game in November, if they're going to get to a college football playoff, there are things that they're going to have to do better. But this is also like a differently constructed team. And I think that adjusting the expectations to your brother's point, like which one of those is best, whatever is needed on a given Saturday, like it to me, I think it's doing a disservice. And I did this too much last year, and I don't want to do it again. If you beat a Big Ten opponent, one that was 5-0, by 20 points. And yes, you were pushed for a half, but not every game is supposed to be as easy as
they've been.
As yeah, like you look at the games.
League is getting better.
That helps. Like you should sometimes have to push yourself to win these games. That's a sign of strength in the Big Ten, and it's a sign of a good program if you're able to do that. By no means does that suggest that Ohio State, the way that it played today, is a completely finished product. But what else are you supposed to do? Like, Maryland played a very good game. They had a good game plan. Talia Tagovailoa made a handful of plays that stressed them. Ohio State was also able to force him out of his comfort zone and get the 2 interceptions that I thought that they might be able to. If you can bring the pass rush, coordinated pass rush, defensive line and secondary, working as a unit, they did that. Looking at all the negatives would ignore that there were a ton of positives for Ohio State in this game, and that's where I'm at.
In the second half.
I think there were still things in the first half. Like Josh Proctor's pick six was in the first half.
That clearly changed. There's 2 plays that Josh Proctor made that changed this game, in my opinion. The pick six, obviously, to change it from Maryland, having momentum and it being 10-7. And then when Maryland scores in the first drive of the second half, Ohio State answers. That next kickoff, Josh Proctor hit a dude so hard that he almost knocked himself out.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, everyone else started hitting dudes hard. We saw Denzel Burke light someone up, and the momentum completely changed from that point. There are positives in the first half. Certainly, Josh Proctor's play, Sonny Styles' play, the way JT Tuimoloau was making impacts, but everything ramped up in the second half. And I just think that most people are going to look at this and say, "Why do you need to wait to the second half?" And the point is, they're not trying to wait till the second half. Maryland's they were 5-0 heading into this game. They are the 4th best team in the Big Ten. They are a top 30 program in the country right now, probably. And you're going to play games that feel a little bit uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that this is what Ohio State wants to be. I think the frustration that some folks may have is that you come off of that big Notre Dame win, and then you expect them to just launch into okay, now we're going to play our best football. But there's not really a reasonable expectation of that. I mean, they beat Notre Dame by 1 inch on the last play of the game. It's not like that. I mean, that can launch you into a different stratosphere emotionally and hey, we're tough, we're resilient. And they showed that again today. But physically, execution-wise, there's a lot of things to fix. And most of that, to my opinion, starts on special teams. Penalties all over the field, those
including on the head coach.
Yeah, I mean, things I haven't seen. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I was unable to see it. Did he just run into the official?
Yeah, he has a tendency to venture out on the sideline. And it's not the first time this season we've even seen that from Ohio State. It's the second time they've been penalized for that this year. The first time for Ryan Day specifically.
But this one was a 15-yarder, not a 5-yarder, because I think he made contact with the official. I think made contact with him.
Yeah, well,
but whatever.
I mean, I can understand his frustration because the officiating in Ohio State games specifically has been quite bad. Let's run through some of the quick news items before we get into a little bit more analysis and some players of the game on Snap Judgments, brought to you by Buyers Auto. TreVeyon Henderson, we mentioned it or alluded to it in the pregame keys. He was dealing with an upper body injury. If this had been the Penn State game, you can bet that TreVeyon Henderson would have played. Ohio State did not want to push it. It was a situation where he could have re-injured it or aggravated it, made it worse if he played. They wanted to take the safe route. It's a long season, and given what TreVeyon Henderson went through a year ago with his foot, I think that the cautious play was correct.
And that's an injury that happened against Notre Dame. For people wondering, when did this occur? It happened at Notre Dame towards the end of the game, and then he continued to play with it. But
yes, but they did not want to risk that. So to be clear, it is an injury, but TreVeyon Henderson is expected to return next week at Purdue. Number 2, Emeka Egbuka. They're going to evaluate that. It looks like he may have dodged a worst-case scenario long-term injury. He was trying to hobble to the sideline. It was an awkward sort of landing on his knee. The coaching staff, the training staff told him, get down, and he had to be helped to the medical tent. Did not return to the game. He was limping pretty heavily when I saw him heading down there for Carmen, Ohio. I guess it was suggested that it may be a bruise on the knee. We'll see how that transpires. It's another week to look at a wide receiver injury. The third one, of course, being Marvin Harrison Jr., who Kyle McCord said afterwards, his good enough is better than almost anybody else in the country. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say that word for word, but I think that's what he meant. So those are the 3 biggies there for Ohio State on the injury front. You monitor that moving forward. Those are the newsy items.
You would think if there's any potential concern for Emeka Egbuka, they'll just shelf him for next week against Purdue and let the offense run without him. I think the wide receiver, you have guys that can play. Xavier Johnson can play a lot of what Emeka Egbuka does. I think that the Marvin Harrison and Kyle McCord connection received a vital bit of data today, which is when in doubt, throw the freaking ball to Marvin Harrison, because either a penalty's coming or a catch is coming.
Is that a Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison thing or a Ryan Day thing?
I think it's a Kyle McCord.
Okay.
I really do. I think that, and again, we were talking about it in Slack in the first half. I thought Kyle McCord was very reluctant to throw the ball in the first half, and that's because Maryland was dropping 8. And then in the second half, Maryland was loading the box with 8. So Ohio State was like, oh, now we can throw.
Yeah, and they said thank you.
It was very strange. Maryland's game plan was working, and then they completely scrapped it.
Yeah.
So that was odd.
They thought Ohio State was going to adjust to that, and they were just like, no, thank you. Now we can run the original game plan.
Neat. So that was weird. But, like, you see Marvin.
Mike Laxley.
You see Marv as a guy who's just going to make a play one way or the other. That catch that he made on the sideline is absolutely absurd.
So was the throw.
So was the throw. And, you know, Kyle had a couple deep shots, one to Julian Fleming that's got caught up in the wind, and one to Marvin Harrison in the first half. He threw it 56 yards or something like that. I don't know how much further he could have thrown it. If he could have thrown it 65, it's a touchdown because Marv was so wide open. But you're dealing with a team that is trying to figure itself out. And the run game, that's a concern. Like, we can't gloss over the concerns. That is a concern. If you're averaging 3.1 yards a carry for Chip Trainham against Maryland when they did drop 8 in the first half and you're not able to get anything going, Mayan Williams came in and delivered a couple blows, but he was still under 4 yards a carry. So there's a concern for me with the offensive line. Pass protection, I think the sacks in the first half, I'm going to put those almost on Kyle McCord and not the pass blocking.
It wasn't great today, though.
It wasn't great either way, but I'm my personal read on the field. This is why we do the rewatch on Mondays, because I'll get a chance to give a further look into it. But I think it was just McCord holding on to the ball too long. Maybe that's just not seeing what he liked in front of him. But I also think the Buckeyes have an opportunity to just, when you see that happening, let's put more receivers out there, because you know the third and short play where they get stopped in the red zone the first time, like you're taking Marvin Harrison off the field, like. Don't take him off the field.
Just spent 2 weeks talking about short yardage and red zone offense, and they're like, watch this. Like, it's going to be different, but it's not going to be better. That was weird. Defensively, safety-driven defense, you can hammer that and take a bunch of drinks for those 3 guys. Holy cow, Josh Proctor, Lathan Ransom with the picks, and Sonny Styles with a massive third down stop later on in the game. That stuff seems pretty obvious to me. Something that doesn't necessarily show up in the box score that I think has to be taken as a strong lesson and strong consideration moving forward for Ohio State is that Caden Curry, good things happen when he is on the field for Ohio State. I don't think it's a coincidence.
I'm trying to couch what I say because I'm not sure what his responsibility is or how it's different than other guys. When Jack Sawyer has been on the field opposite JT Tuimoloau, the pass rush is worse. When Kenyatta Jackson was on the field today, when Caden Curry was on the field today, somehow JT Tuimoloau's pass rush was better opposite. Maybe it just happened to be that those are true pass rush situations, because there was Maryland had a third and short where Jack Sawyer was lined up almost in like a wide 9, and his job, I looked through my camera again to make sure, and he's there in a read position. So I don't know how much of it is on Jack being given a different assignment. I don't know how much of it is, if you put it in Caden, you said just go cause chaos, rock like Amadeus. But I think that, Ohio State saw today the value of chaos. Like, if you just force Talia to move around, like, yeah, maybe he'll break a play, maybe he'll scramble for 12 yards, but like that's when he's going to make mistakes. He's comes from a pretty good quarterback family, apparently. I just found that out. He has a brother who plays in the NFL.
Who?
Yeah, Talia. His brother is the Dolphins starting quarterback.
You're kidding me.
No. So, like, he's going to know what to do in the pocket. You've got to find ways to get him uncomfortable, and that matters down the road, because that's what you're going to face when you're facing J.J. McCarthy in Ann Arbor, as someone who, if you don't put pressure on him, he is going to pick you apart. And the Buckeyes allowed Talia to do that in the first quarter, and then they stopped it. I mean, Kyle McCord threw for 130 more yards than he did, and Kyle had a minus 20-yard pass.
That was one of the weirder plays that I've seen in a while. You don't see a lot of losses of 18. And then then Ohio State took a 5-yard penalty for delay of game after that. And they're like, 2nd and 33. Hey, there's an alien running down the sideline.
Throw it to the alien.
Let's throw it to the alien. That was a pretty good idea.
The one-legged alien.
He's quite good at football. Normally, we've been skipping over special teams entirely, but Burn, we cannot do that today.
No. And I think that this is just one of those weeks where we have to petition people to change the name because it's not special. It's bad teams. That was a bad team.
It was suboptimal.
There were. It's not. You can mistake. You can excuse like a block in the back on a big return. People getting too hyped up. These are just boneheaded things that are going on. Number one, a bad snap on the punt. I don't know what happened there because if that's not a fake punt, which Ryan Day said it was not a fake punt, how does a long snap go 3 yards to the up back? Did it spin funny? Like it almost seems impossible for a snap to be that bad on a punt.
How does the same team keep making the same blunder with snaps 3 times in 8 games?
I've never, if that was not a fake punt, which I have no reason to doubt Ryan Day saying it wasn't, there is almost no world in which the long snapper's snap should go 3 yards to his left and only go 3 yards in the air. So
look at this.
This has been crazy out here. We are
getting drilled just with a trash avalanche. I've never seen anything like it. It's like we're being prepared.
Yeah.
Look at this. We're being Purdue. Purdue's weather is actually here right now. It's dangerous out here.
And this has nothing to do with special teams. Let's be clear. You get a hold on a fair catch. You get a 5 men in the backfield illegal formation on a punt that you give up a 26-yard return on. You get it's just confusing. Ohio State is one of very few teams in the country that has a full-time special teams coach, and for it to continue to be this erratic and today straight up bad, that is vexing.
All right, there I go again down that negative path.
But let's be positive.
Don't want to be there.
20-point win.
Cade Stover touchdown. Really well schemed up. He finished it off. He'd been so close to having that breakthrough. He gets it. He felt good and almost smiled in the post-game locker room, which we're really close to that. Josh Proctor, big smile. His family was waiting for him as he left the stadium here today. They joked. You can see that on the notebook later on. Like, long time coming, 6 years. Those are cool stories. They should be celebrated. It was a massive play in the game for Ohio State.
Isn't it kind of funny? I don't mean to jump in, but like you should. There are guys on this team who, if you ask the average fan, I think a year ago, like, who are you rooting for? Who's your guy? Who's your Buckeye? Like a year ago, if you would have told people it's Denzel Burke and Josh Proctor, they would have told you to F right off. You know? But now these are the dudes that are like, they're laying it all on the line, and you see it, and it's awesome. Cody Simon getting a huge 4th down stop. Like there's a guys on this team that are, we trying to balance. Okay, good and bad. Another game for Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers. I'm not entirely sure if their eye discipline is off, because it seems like anytime there's misdirection, those guys are going the wrong way. So Cody Simon played well in some mop-up duty for Steel Chambers when Steel seemed like he got kind of asked to take a break.
Take a break.
And so you're seeing these other guys get a chance to fill in. Second quarter, Buckeyes tied up at 10, and then immediately it's Jaden McKenzie and Ty Hamilton on the field for the first series. They give up the first down, but they did their job. The Buckeyes got off the field with a punt after that, and so
after those guys left the field.
Yeah, but we have to see rotation. There needs to be some depth playing. Tyleek Williams on the Lathan Ransom interception seemed to re-aggravate himself. He was not celebrating with the team. He was angrily stomping about that he had apparently tweaked his knee again or something. So like, it's vital to get those guys some reps, but at that point in the game, maybe it's not when you want to. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's worth a reminder. I mean, Tyleek Williams himself said a week or two ago, like, what do you mean back healthy? Like, he still wasn't fully healthy on that knee, which, again, like, it's eye-opening how well he's playing. But there were a lot of guys that did that, because you can't beat a team that comes in 5-0 in the Big Ten without a good effort from across the board. And Ohio State did that. They beat Mike Loxley in Maryland 37-17 in here. Next week, on the road at Purdue, so there will be some snap judgments there as well. We appreciate you joining us. However, if you caught it live or if you're catching it later, either way, we thank you for watching it on the podcast. Snap judgments are brought to you by Byers Auto. He is Berm. I am Austin. We will talk to you later.
Thanks to Berm and Austin out at the shoe. Glad they didn't get blown away. Those wind tunnels, man, they'll get you, Landis.
It can get pretty windy down there, and especially in that end of the stadium. It's probably a little better now that it's closed off more, but yeah, if you're standing in that team tunnel and it starts whipping around down there, it can be a little precarious. get hit with a water bottle or something.
Last year at Northwestern, after the crazy game, it was like when we were in postgame, it was like there were like giant racks of things blowing around. Anyway, they touched on special teams, and I want us to touch on that too, because it has been an ongoing thing. And as they mentioned, Parker Fleming is employed as a full-time special teams coach. He has an offensive background. His other duties are on defense. It doesn't make any sense. His they act like he's involved in other recruiting. I can't imagine that it's very impactful to have the special teams coach like come recruit you if you're not a special teams player. I think we're really at the point of like I think it's a wasted position, and it's not even about whether he's doing the job effectively or not. It's that I just think that 10th assistant coaching spot could be used for something better, because okay, it wasn't a fake, it was a poor snap. But this is like multiple times. We're seeing it repeatedly where there are mistakes on special teams in a world where that's all he coaches. And if you're not going to be better by focusing one guy on this, then try something different. It's not personal. It's not working.
No, it's maximizing your resources. And my philosophy would be to never have a full-time special teams coach. And I think there actually are few teams that actually do it. I went back and looked at some of this in the offseason when they gave Parker Fleming a 2-year contract extension for some reason. And there aren't many teams that have full-time special team coaches that don't also coach another position. But if you're going to do that, you better be excellent on special teams. And they are not. And they have not been since Parker Fleming has been doing this. They had the botched punt. They had a penalty for having too many guys in the backfield when they were punting the ball. They allowed a 26-yard return, I believe, on the same play. They had a holding penalty on a fair catch, which I don't know that I've seen before. So part of it is player miscues, right? But it all goes back onto the coach. It all goes back onto the guy who's coordinating the show. And they are not a particularly strong special teams outfit, and I don't think have been, with the exception of usually punt and punt coverage is pretty good. They let the one get out today, but they've had good gunners and good punters, and are pretty good at pinning teams inside the 5 and 10 yard line, or at least have been historically. But aside from that, there's nothing special about what they do on special teams, and I am nervous about it every week because you almost expect a blunder to happen, and I don't know why Ohio State fans are expected to accept that, or why the Buckeyes have to live in that world when they have a guy who gets paid $500,000 a year to focus on nothing but that. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, it's really a problem. He was an internal hire. It was a comfortable hire for Ryan Day, just like Keenan Bailey was, just like Corey Dennis was. It's inside the building. I understand you want to build loyalty, but there's just not a lot being brought to the table. And it's big boy school. So, and that you could give that job to James Laurinaitis, make him the full-time linebackers coach, have Jim Knowles just be the defensive coordinator. Now James Laurinaitis can go out on the road and recruit and do everything that a full-time assistant can do, and just split up the special teams among everybody else. Just seems like a much better use of that position. And a lot of people have thought that for a long time. So I don't know why it's okay. And it's not because the field goal kicker missed a field goal that could have won him a national championship last year. But it's also not because of that. You know what I mean? Your response as a coach, you're responsible for the performance of your players. And when you start lumping everything together, the snap call that the fake against Michigan that the snapper didn't get last year, and I know that was the second team snapper, but again, it's the guys on that unit make mistakes, and that the coach has to be responsible. I mean, some of these guys are walk-ons. We're not going to be I can't believe that walk-on screwed it up. But you can do it to the coach.
Yeah. They also had the fake punt they were going to call against Georgia that everyone thought it was Kirby Smart's the best timeout in the history of college football, but Ohio State also had 12 players on the field. So they're not sharp there. And it's you don't ever want to be deficient in special teams, right? But they could not have a full-time special teams coordinator do exactly what you just said in James Laurinaitis, and I don't think be any worse off than they are right now. Maybe they're not better, but they're not worse off on the field, and they're probably exponentially better in recruiting and even better than they are currently on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Okay. Mike has a couple more questions from our tech subscribers. Again, if you guys want to be part of it, 614-662-4509. You send a text to that number. You get back a link to sign up. You get a free trial for 2 weeks. Mike, what do we have?
Yeah, guys, let's go back to the offensive side of the ball. Zachary would like to know, is Kyle McCord short-arming passes, or does he just not have the deep ball arm strength?
I thought he was a gunslinger, Landis.
Yeah, I chuckled because I thought the question was, is Kyle McCord short? End of question.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, is he short arming them? No, he does have a little bit of gunslinger to him, but I also think like the ability to like really drive that ball down the field is I think a more of a discussion about lower half strength than it is like pure arm strength, or like wiry strength. And like Kyle McCord is like, I don't know, he has skinny legs, I guess for lack of a better way to describe it. So yeah, he's not he's not Justin Fields, he's not Anthony Richardson, he's not Joe Milton, he doesn't have a bazooka latched to his arm. I think he's got pretty good velocity on like intermediate throws, but big arm, bomb the ball down the field, at least consistently, like over and over and over again, does not necessarily seem to be his strong suit at the moment.
And I don't want Joe Milton. I
do
Joe
not
Milton,
want Joe Milton. Yeah.
Former Michigan quarterback, 6th-year guy at Tennessee who can throw it through a wall. I wouldn't take him over Kyle McCord. And Cardale Jones had the strongest arm that I think anybody will ever have at Ohio State. And like they couldn't figure out a way for him to be the quarterback for an entire year. So I certainly don't think that's all on Cardale, but there's so many things that go into being a quarterback. And I do think with better coaching, Cardale could have been a very good starting quarterback for a full season. I think Kyle has enough arm. I think he has all the arm that you need, and also is a little bit windy today. So, Mike, what else?
Yeah, guys, we'll stick with the offensive side of the ball. Ian wants to know, why does the offense go away from lack of tempo and pushing the ball down the field when they operate quite well with tempo and throwing the ball down the field?
It's a great question. Ryan Day chooses to use tempo as a tool rather than as a way of doing business. They vary tempo a lot. It's hard to quantify, but I would imagine that they vary their tempo as much as any team in college football. Like you'll get rapid pace from them. You'll get sugar huddle from them. You'll get check with me from them where they're holding on the ball for 35 seconds. Like you'll get all of it throughout the course of a game. And I think that in and of itself is a little difficult to deal with as a defense. And that's why they operate that way. But I also agree that they seem to look their best when they're just rocking and rolling, put the ball down, snap it, let's go. And I actually think that could like help Kyle settle into things a little more. Maybe help the offensive line settle into things a little more, like give the defense less time to set its front against whatever you're trying to do and then muck up your identifications as an offensive line. So I would love to see them play faster than they do, but they under Ryan Day play actually rather slow on average. And I just wish they would push the pace a little more.
Don't they usually go tempo when they're having success? They don't go tempo to create success.
Yes, I think that's a good way to say it. Yeah.
And I think Ryan Day thinks the worst thing you can do is to go fast ineffectively.
Indiana's 2022 offense. Yeah.
Yes. So the idea of, I mean, they can't fully trust this offensive line right now. They just can't. And the quarterback's still working his way in. So the idea of like, all right, here we go. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, we're punting.
Yeah.
That's what he's afraid of. Mm-hmm. So I kind of get where he's coming from, but I think when it's going well, it feels like, man, why don't they go tempo when they're bogging down? And I think Ryan Day instead thinks like, man, we're bogging down. We can't risk tempo. We'll just be this bad, but more quickly. So, Mike, any more?
Yeah, we got one coming from Jack. I think this is a good question. You kind of look at the score and you see Ohio State wins by 20 and you see, oh, they won by 20. It might be an easy game. Jack wants to know, do wins like this hide major flaws a team might have?
I don't think they're hiding.
Yeah, they seem quite obvious. Yeah, I think they expose them. if and we're talking about offense, right? If Ohio State's offense didn't have to kick 2 field goals like when they got the ball inside the 10-yard line, then it's a different game. But the fact that it is 37-17, I think highlights the fact that they have those issues. I don't think it masks them. I guess maybe the concern and the question is, if you're Ohio State, like, oh, we won by 20. What do you mean? We don't need to fix anything. Maybe that, but like as a watcher, no, I thought the flaws were very much evident in this game.
And as we talk, Alabama might be on its way to losing to Texas A&M. Again, everybody's got problems, man. Everybody's got problems. There is not a perfect team out there. So that context, you must keep that in your heart and in your mind as an Ohio State fan this season. This is not a perfect team, but there is not a super team out there. There is not. And Ohio State's flaws, I think we know what they are, and just like trying to figure out like how do you work around them. And I think, their strengths are, their flaws might be as flawed as a lot of teams. I think their strengths might be stronger, right? That not everybody has a Marv when your weaknesses are creeping up on you and just say, I don't know, Marv 8 for 163. Will that solve it? Or let's let our safeties run wild and destroy games. Like, they have answers in a way that not everybody has, Landis.
Yeah, now you're convincing me of an Ohio State Georgia rematch. Like two teams that are flawed, but what's Georgia's answer? I don't know, just throw it to Brock Bowers.
Please don't let me convince you of that, because it's not going to be Georgia. It's not going to be Georgia. It's a better chance of an Ohio State Michigan national title game than there is an Ohio State Georgia national title game.
Oh boy,
strap in.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I want to ask one question, and then we'll go back to Mike to see if there's any more. How good is Maryland? Because listen, as people have noted, like, Austin thinks Maryland sucks, right? And then after the game, Austin's like, I don't want to be negative. This is a great win for the Buckeyes. What are we doing? Austin cannot disrespect the program more than he disrespects Maryland. So, like, I think they are who we thought they were.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty good team that really is not at the point to level up to this. So I don't think you want to take for granted a 20-point win over a Maryland team that very well may be one of the 25 or at least 35 best teams in the country. I think that's real. They do have some guys. A lot of their catches were contested catches. Davison Egbuka is all over the guy in the end zone on the first touchdown. He's right there. They hit a back shoulder on Jordan Hancock. He's right there. Denzel Burke is stride for stride. Denzel Burke won more than he lost today, but he gave up a couple because guys made contested catches. A lot of teams don't have guys like that. So in that way, I think you have to credit Maryland. But also, I thought most of Ohio State's problems today were self-inflicted. So how good is Maryland is my question, Landis, but really all that matters is we're trying to figure out how good Maryland is to contextualize this Ohio State game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess but I don't really know how to quantify it. I think, like, by the end of the year, it's quite possible that Maryland is the fourth best team that Ohio State played, right? Like, they're certainly not better than Notre Dame. They're not better than Penn State. They're not better than Michigan. There's a world where Maryland is better than Wisconsin, I think, right? You have to go to Madison and play them. That's a different animal. But in terms of just like quality of team, I think Maryland could very well end up being the fourth best team Ohio State played this year. A team that wins probably 8 games, maybe wins every game except for the Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State games, which is a fine existence for Maryland. I think we have seen better Maryland offenses in the past, or maybe better skill from Maryland. Like, Jayshon Jones is pretty good, but they've had years where, like, they had a couple dudes at receiver. I don't know if they have a couple dudes at receiver this year. But I think this is a vastly improved Maryland offensive line. I think this is a better version of a Maryland defense, especially up front, than we've been accustomed to seeing. So I think they're a solid team. I think they are comfortably like a top 35 team, I think, in the country.
But I do think what Ohio State did offensively in the second half was there to be done in the first half. And Ohio State was more the issue than Maryland.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of move into, I do think you have to give credit for working it out. So Kyle McCord had a really bad first half, but I think what matters the most is that he didn't get down. They did find a way, he and Ryan Day and Corey Dennis and Todd Fitch and everybody else around the quarterback position, led by Marv. They found a way to work it out and for him to be effective in the second half. And I especially think with a young player, there has to be probably in the end more credit than criticism when you find a way to work it out. And I do think they probably found some things in the second half and even late in the first half that will be valuable for them down the line, even though the early mistakes I think were mostly self-inflicted.
I agree with all of that. I guess the thing that is frustrating is they have not really yet seemed to land on what they want to be and do offensively, and you would hope that they'd be at that point after 5 games and a week off. And it does still feel like they're searching a little bit for what they really want this identity to be, which is, I think, problematic, right? Because if you're I think if you're still in that mode when you're playing up against Penn State's defense, which I don't know, like might be the best defense in the country. I don't know that it definitely is. It could be. You could be asking for trouble. So can they get it all figured out in 1 week going up against Purdue? Probably not. But some steps could be taken, I guess. And maybe they were taken in the second half of this game.
All right, Mike, last couple questions from our loyal tech subscribers.
Yeah, guys, we will flip with the last one. We'll go over to the defensive side of the ball. They're kind of wondering, our texters are wondering, a lot of them are wondering why the defense kind of plays a vanilla defense most of the time. They'd like to see more blitzing out of Jim Knowles and
vanilla.
That's what they like to know. They want, they're saying it's vanilla. They'd like to see a little bit more blitzing. And that might be, I guess to you, is that a lack of pass rushers? Is that a lack of guys that can cover, man to man? If you're blitzing guys, you're leaving guys out in islands on the corners.
They'd like to give up a few more 51-yard pass plays. I don't. We have the evidence, Mike. It's very, and I'm not disputing that feeling from the texters, and I'm not disputing, Mike, that a lot of them are feeling this way. But when you're the number one goal has to be eliminate big plays, and they don't give up any. So this is how you do it. And as Jim Knowles said already, they might get more aggressive over the course of the season. But I thought they over blitzed last year. I thought they were overly aggressive. So if in the path to a middle ground, they have to swing to not aggressive enough, I'm okay with that. Work it out. You were too aggressive. You're not aggressive enough. Maybe now get to a middle ground. But man, this is certainly better than the alternative at the end of last year in my mind.
Yeah, I think so too. It's kind of a weird thing, right? And maybe I won't articulate this the best way, but like Ohio State's defense when Kerry Combs was a coordinator, I think was a similar bend but don't break kind of style. But I always felt like that defense was on its heels. And I do not feel that way with this defense. Like they are giving up a little bit of a cushion because they don't want to give up those big plays. But I still feel like I feel them flying around. I still feel like they hit pretty hard. I thought Burn made a good point about that Josh Proctor hit on the kick return, setting a little bit of a tone, and then Ohio State started thumping a little more on the defensive side. But I've felt all year that they've been arriving with ill intent when they get to hit people, and they force a couple of fumbles, and it's at all three levels of the defense. So there's a lot of different ways to be an effective defense, right? And if you're someone who is more inclined to want to see blitzing, and that's totally fine. I don't think you can have it both ways. Like I don't think you can be a defense that is as aggressive as they were last year and not give up big plays. So it's a question of like, what would you rather have? And like Jim Knowles' defense at Oklahoma State, right, were statistically very good and super aggressive. They also gave up a ton of big plays. So like, do you want to live in that world? That's fine. But I think Ohio State pretty clearly has chosen not to live in that world. So this is like kind of what you get. But I still feel like this is a defense that imposes its will, even if it does it in a little bit less of an aggressive way than they were last year.
And I do think the idea of when you are facing a quarterback that you believe, if you just make him do it often enough, he'll make a mistake. And I think Tonga Bailoa is like the perfect quarterback to try to do that against. And it was proved correct, right? I think Drew Aller, I think Hudson Card next week against Purdue, probably that kind of quarterback. I think Drew Aller, Penn State, might be that kind of quarterback. I think Tanner Mordecai, Wisconsin, is almost certainly that kind of quarterback. And then the question is like, is J.J. McCarthy that kind of quarterback anymore? We know he had the 3-pick game earlier this year. They're going to have to answer that question, and they're going to have to dive in, and I'm sure they are, on J.J. McCarthy all year to decide by the Michigan game, do we play back and assume if we make him do it often enough, he'll make a mistake? Or if we give him too many throws with off coverage, is he going to kill us? But until that point, I think this works. Yes?
Yeah. Yes, I do. And one more point to the label of vanilla. I don't know that they've been vanilla on the back end of the defense. Coverages are hard to see on television, right? And even I myself, like I don't want to overstate my expertise in the area. Like I'm still trying to learn a lot about it too. So I just like listen and read a lot of people who know more about it. It does seem like Jim Knowles is doing a little more coverage wise this year than he was last year. So like mixing up and changing the picture, I think, is a way to not be vanilla in a world where you're not blitzing as much.
We've talked about it. I think they're doing a very effective job of zone to man, just in simple terms. From snap to snap, the quarterback doesn't know what he's getting. There was a series of plays where Talia completed like a crossing route where a guy found a window, and I think they were in man, and then they came back on the next series to the same concept, and he wanted it again, and it wasn't there because the Buckeyes were in zone. And it's like,
they tried to run mesh, right? They tried to run
So like that kind of thing. I think we can underestimate it. I think it's a point, people just want to blitz. So do I. I get it. Everybody wants to blitz every down and get 10 sacks. Except last year they blitzed and they lost to Michigan because they blitzed. And it didn't help against Georgia. So now I don't want him to blitz anymore. So right. I think it's working. All right, last question, Mike.
Yeah, guys, last one will come from Greg. Greg is wondering, are we worried that Day's temperament could cost us a game? He's been a little bit emotional the past couple weeks, and he says it is such a difference from, as he calls Mr. Jim Tressel, Senator Tressel.
Have we not, or would we not be getting questions about Ryan Day doesn't have enough fire in him? Has that not been, people don't want this? I think, don't people want Ryan Day to like tackle the linesman? I don't like, get out of my way.
Yeah.
Don't you want fire? Not penalties, but fire?
You don't want penalties. I think you do want fire, but it's like it's again, it's like the Notre Dame question. It's like, yeah, you're like, we love our head coach to be this way and speak up on behalf of the players and be a spokesman for the program and bring the juice. But you don't need to prove those points via your play calling. So like that's the balance that Ryan Day needs to strike, which I think maybe is the heart of the question. So I get the concern there because it does still feel like they are. Ryan Day always says like, you don't want to run your head into a wall. Like keep doing it. So like he needs to listen to his own advice.
But do you think Ohio State fans want a head coach who would like slam his headset on the ground in the middle of a game, or no?
No.
I
don't know. The context matters, I think.
Yeah. I think I think only Tressel can be Tressel, right? Tressel did it. And Tressel also won a national championship in year 2. So it was like, that works.
Yeah.
I think more often than not, Kevin Stefanski is very calm on the Browns sideline, and it drives me crazy. And I'm like, does he even care? I want Kevin Stefanski, not that I care about the Browns right now, to run into officials, right? I think that composed, smart, play calling guru, culture, whatever, but also I want to see a little something on game day, baby. Like, I think that's good, not like right up to the border of getting a penalty for it. But I think fire from your head coach is a good thing, not a bad thing, generally speaking. Yes?
Yeah, I think so.
In Philadelphia, it is.
Yeah, like I like Nick Sirianni, the Eagles coach. I appreciate his sideline demeanor. He's he'll yell at fans, he'll yell at refs. It's great.
Yeah. All right. Last thing that I wanted to cover is, again, I didn't think, especially on the offensive side of the ball, I didn't think it was like a great coaching effort kind of all around. Like you watch the first half and it's like, man, what's Justin Fry doing? Man, the quarterback play isn't very good. What's Corey Dennis doing? We already covered Parker Fleming. I guess the receivers are pretty darn good. I don't know that people are wondering about Brian Hartline, but also like the run game is not particularly effective. Tony Alford's without his top guy. You mentioned it, and I just want to really dig in on it. I just thought the play action rollout touchdown pass to Cade Stover was like, okay, like that is a culmination. That is, you're setting something up. They have the entire offensive line, the receiver motion, and the running back go left. Cade Stover leaks out right, and it's a play call that sets up a 44-yard kind of game-ending touchdown, basically.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder of like, okay, like there's Ryan Day and this offensive staff are still capable of this, and then coupling it with the third down blitz that Sonny Styles got the sack. They kind of worked in concert with each other. I thought it was a reminder of like, okay, yep, no, these guys, they got a little something for you. And we end up talking about play calling a lot. There were things that did not work today, but I thought that was an example Those two examples from those two play calls, I was like, that's some coaching. Pretty good.
Yeah, the Stover touchdown was good. Like, and that's why they consistently maddeningly run those runs into the boundary so much, because you want to get the defense to overcommit moving horizontally so you can then pivot back the other way and hit them with a play action pass. So it was good to see them set that up. I still think they are suffering from smartest guy in the room syndrome. Like, I don't know what else to call it. Like, their red zone play calling today, aside from like the nice toss sweep to Chip that he scored on, I thought the red zone play calling was atrocious. Like, the screen to Xavier Johnson into the short side of the field when you have Marvin and Mecca on the other side, like, use those guys.
They had Julian over there too. They had
Yeah.
their best three receivers on the same side against 4. 3-on-4. That's 2 guys with one-on-one matchups, and they stayed with a tunnel screen to Xavier Johnson to the short side.
Yeah, and then they tried they scored, and then the next time they got down there after that, they tried to work a pass off the toss sweep they scored off of, which I don't have a problem with. Like, Maryland did a good job of sifting that out, I guess. But then they like try to sprint out, throw back to Cade Stover. It's just like the degree of difficulty on that play, and it goes back to what we talked about before. Like, I think maybe on a previous post-game show, or maybe on a midweek Kings of Columbus. Like, if the success and failures of your play is solely dependent on tricking the defense, then like that's probably not great process, or at least it's not something you want to run multiple times a game when you're Ohio State, right? You're not Rutgers trying to be a pain in the butt to Ohio State. You're Ohio State. You should be able to line up and go score a touchdown without having to do all that stuff. But at the moment, they're struggling to do that.
Matthew Jones, I thought, also let his guy get right through on that throwback screen. It put pressure on.
Yeah, it's play calling and execution, right? It all goes hand in hand. But I also think there's a disconnect now, and like I thought this was a good point. Somebody posted it on the message board at Rivals, but it was tweeted from a guy named Devin Radcliffe, who I think is a high school football coach in Ohio. He might do some stuff with Buckeye Huddle. And he said about the offensive line specifically, he said, call the things they can do, not the things you want them to do. Which I think is like simple, right? And maybe obvious, but I think it is a very good summation of what is going on with Ohio State's offense right now. I don't think the players are consistently enough being put in good positions to succeed, because they're being asked to do a lot of things I just don't think they can do right now. And that's especially frustrating coming off of a bye week when you're supposed to have studied all of your tendencies and really key in on your strengths and stay away from the areas where you're deficient. It just felt like Ohio State came out after the week off. I was like, yeah, we're going to try the same stuff and see if it works this time. And it didn't.
First half Ohio State offense, lose it on downs on the weird snap punt, field goal. So really 5 punts. They wanted it to be a punt. 5 punts in the field goal in the first half. Second half, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, field goal. So the first half they score on 1 of 6 drives. The second half they score on 5 of 5 drives. And when I was talking about this game, I said, I think they'll come out and score on 6 of their first 7 drives. And they did in the second half. So it took them a while to get going. So like all these things, like do what they do well. It's like, okay, in the second half, as an offense overall, as a whole, they did what they do well. A lot of that's get it to Marv, but a nice throwback, right? The Stover touchdown, a couple other, like it felt like they found their, and again, what is rhythm? Rhythm is doing what you do well and doing it well. Mm-hmm. So I think credit for the second half adjustments, things they can learn from. Ryan Day certainly frustrated by the first half. Fans frustrated by the first half. Justifiably so all the way around. But imagine the world we'd be in if the second half had looked like the first half. And they kick a field goal with 3 seconds left to win 2017. And we were just only talking about everything was the first half twice.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Right. No, they did. Yeah.
So
I think
they were much better in the second half.
Yeah. And it's okay. I think it's okay to embrace that and talk about that, right? You want to show an ability to get things figured out, make those adjustments, whatever it is. And they did do that. Like, I think give them credit for that.
All right. I think Bama's going to lose to Texas A&M. Everybody was like, here comes Bama. Oh, don't underestimate Bama in the SEC. Go ahead and underestimate him. Jalen Miller just threw a pick. He had a wide open guy, and he threw a balloon. The guy who was like, hey, that guy's open 20 yards down the field. What if I throw this like you would throw it at middle school recess? I'll just loft it up in the air. Nobody will jump in front of the receiver and pick it off. It's like, no, they will, because it's college football. So, and now Bama just got the ball back again. So maybe they'll find a way to win. But just to confirm, I think you'd rather be Ohio State than Bama. Yes, we can play this game on Monday on Kings of the North.
Yeah.
Who would you rather be? Like, Ohio State's not perfect, but man, there's a lot of goofy football being played by high-level programs this season. So keep that in the back of your head. Rewatch Landis and Berm. You'll have that up on Monday. Is that right? That's how you
That's
guys
the plan.
roll?
Yeah, we'll do it.
Sunday should be Austin and Zach Bourne breaking it down. Buckeye
That's
Q.
right.
That's how
Yep.
they roll.
Mm-hmm.
Kings of the North, Monday evening. Live show from Roosters, Monday afternoon. Austin and Landis and Berm and Bobby Carpenter usually, and Justin Zwick, a bunch of dudes hanging out, eating wings. Just a lot of stuff here happening on the podcast feed. Thanks to everybody who's joined us on this post-game show, whether you watched it live or whether you watched it back later. Thanks to Mike Urostowski, our new producer, who's going to be doing awesome things with us. We're super excited about it. We're leveling up, right? It's the next thing. And the idea of being able to bring in Austin and Berm, bring in Ryan Day. We have more wider variety of cool graphics for everybody watching on YouTube. That's happening because Mike is here and Mike's doing a great job. So it's great to have him. Mike, how was it? Did you have fun on your first post-game show?
Yeah, guys, a blast. I'll tell you what, though, that first half, I was getting a little nervous. I was texting Berm. I said, really, my first post-game show might be a loss. I said, that might be a bad omen to start.
100% would have blamed the new guy, too. That's exactly how he would have started.
As expected, as you should have. But no, second half, McCord and Marv, they bailed me out. But no, it was great stuff. I'm excited to be here. I thank you guys for giving me the opportunity. And like you guys said, this is just the beginning.
Yeah. A lot of great stuff ahead. Thanks to you guys for being part of it. For now, for Austin Ward, Jeremy Birmingham, Mike Urostowski, and Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was the post-game show on the podcast.